everyone from Wasteland TV. This is Katie, here with
Garrett K. Jones.
Hi Garrett. Now, I heard that you're a fantasy writer. Can you show us what books you write?
Well, I've got a couple that I have out right now. I have book one, ᴄᴏᴘᴘᴜ, which came out in 2015. I have book two, The Destiny of Dragons, which actually came out earlier this year, and I had it especially for a con that I did back in March. And then a couple weeks ago, book three came out, and I launched it officially here at the Modesto Classic Con. This is ᴅɪsᴄʟᴜ. They're all part of a series called the Archives of Icino Regn, and this is a series I've been working on for about 19 years.
Wow, that's a lot of years.
Yes. Yeah. The characters started off as comic book characters that I had designed in high school, and during a trip that I spent as an exchange student in Japan, I started working with the characters a little bit more, and I found that putting them in this medium was a better fit for the characters. I was able to do more, and I didn't have to go around explaining the realities of it, because magic.
Everything's explained with magic.
Yes, everything is explained with magic. And that seems to be the ex machina for everything in fantasy. And I got into writing, I started writing the first book, and initially I looked back at what I had worked on. I was going through the editing process, and it was terrible. I took all my drafts, threw them into a barrel, and I set them on fire. And then I started over from scratch, and I kept some of the main elements from it for this book, and I just trimmed it down as far as how many characters I was focusing on, and what kind of events I wanted to put in there.
Okay, where are the characters in your first book?
So the characters take place in a kingdom, or a series of kingdoms called ⴑ Regn. It's a nation made of 5 kingdoms that, while they have different governments, they all have 2 rules that they have to abide by: open borders with one another and a common currency. And so everything else is independent on how they want to rule and how they deal with things. The centermost kingdom is one gigantic city called ⴑ It's broken into 4 districts, and it's ruled by a political senate. The westernmost kingdom is called ᴄᴏᴘ, and it's right on the coast. It boasts a really powerful navy and an economy based on fishing and sailing. The northernmost kingdom, there aren't many cities to it, and that's because the elves all congregated there, and that's where they came from. In the east, you have a kingdom called ᴑᴜ, which is a theocracy. So you have a king, and then any one part of the royal family takes the throne. If there's nobody in the royal family, their Lord General, who's the commander of all their military forces, he would take the throne. And if he's not there, then the high priest of the kingdom, he would assume leadership. And that's kind of where the kingdom is at by the time you get through book 1. And then the southernmost kingdom is ruled by a dictator who is the heir of a ancient warlord who is the first half-elf, half-human.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of mythology that I put into it, and trying to build up the world.
How much research have you had to do for this?
A lot of the research I did was on different elements of supernatural lore, just to kind of see what I could parse together. The other thing I research heavily are languages. One of the things I wanted to do is, because I'm not a linguist like Tolkien was, but I wanted to, instead of just saying, well, this was what it sounded like in the ancient language, I wanted to make each language stand out. So I went and I started researching different languages to see what fit. And so for like elves, and I used Italian and French as the basis for the language. For the dwarves, I used German. For the vampires, I do have vampires. They don't sparkle. For all you Twilight fans, I'm sorry. But the vampires, their language is based on Castilian Spanish, which has kind of a lisping sound. And so that seemed to be a perfect blend, especially considering the fact that, spoiler alert, the vampires have a connection back to the elves and the dragons, and so it would make sense that their language sounds similar to the language of the elves.
Okay. So, if you can actually categorize, like, rating this, what would you prefer? Like, kids reading this story to adults?
I would say that this is the series. I think of it in terms of cinematic. So if I were to turn these into animation movies or live action, I would say at least PG-13. Okay. So I would say 13 would be maybe the youngest, but definitely starting at 14 on up. There are some adult themes. There are some, there's fighting, there's war, there's bloodshed. There are some romantic scenarios, but especially with the romantic scenarios, I leave a lot to the imagination. I do a quick cut saying, well, this is what they were about to do.
Okay.
I leave it to the imagination, and then it picks up like the next morning or something like that. So I try to treat it as because I'm a parent, so I want to make sure that I want it to be something that my kids could read when they're old enough to read it.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And if someone wanted to contact you for this, maybe
if someone wanted to contact me, I have a website. It's a companion site actually. It's www.archivesofthefiveKingdoms.com, and you go to the home screen. It has information for book 3 right now, a list of other locations I'm going to be at over the next couple of months, and it also has a full companion site. So you have character descriptions, location descriptions, a timeline of events that lead up to and include the first book, so you get a little bit of history there, and there's also a map where you can follow along with where the characters are traveling at any given time. The other thing I do is I have pronunciation guides. A lot of authors in the past have front-loaded that into the book, or they put it in the back of the book as a glossary, and it gets really irritating to have to flip back and forth and lose your place.
I agree.
And so I made a point of going. I'm taking full advantage of digital content, and I have that all there. That way, all they have to do is pull up their phone, their iPad, their computer, and they're ready to go, and they can just read and look, and they're good, and they don't lose their place. There are Kindle editions for every single one of the books, and the other thing is I try to make it as interactive as possible. So I keep a blog on there, and if any readers or fans want to get in contact with me, there is a contact page, and they send in their message, they put in an email where I can respond back to them, and if they have a question that I can address for them or a comment that I can talk about, I put that in the blog as well.
Okay. Well, this is pretty interesting. I hope you guys check him out. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I hope you have a great day.
You too.
Bye.